Stanford University.
Welcome. Welcome to Stanford Medicine's Contemplation by Design program. I'm Dr. Tia Rich, the founder and director of Contemplation by Design. It is my honor to introduce our speaker, Dr. Yi-Yuan Tang. He will be speaking to us about contemplative neuroscience, what we know and what we don't know. Dr. Tang is a professor and director of the Health Neuroscience Collaboratory at Arizona State University. He studies the neuroscience of cognitive, physical, and mental health and behavior change over the lifespan and has published 10 books and over 300 peer-reviewed articles. He is the founder of an effortless contemplative practice, integrative body-mind training, originated from ancient Eastern traditions such as traditional Chinese medicine and Zen. Join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Tang.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I can imagine many faces on Zoom, and I want to thank Tia first for her introduction, and thanks for everybody's participation in this summit. Actually, I learned a lot from the summit, speakers' talk, and your questions. So today, I would like to take this opportunity to share my understanding about the contemplative neuroscience. Of course, you know, this is a very big field. I cannot cover all the wonderful studies, but I will try my best to find the right one to share my knowledge with you. I hope you will enjoy and may you be happy, well, and safe. I'm going to share my screen with you. I try to cover what we know and what we don't know about this field. And a brief background about my work. So actually my work covers basic and translational research, try to understand the effects and the body-brain mechanism of evidence-based preventions and interventions. I call it all experience. So in different domains like brain, body, physiology, and health. So I use lots of non-pharmacological approaches. So one is related to the contemplative practice. So usually we try to develop and implement evidence-based intervention. So across the lifespan to figure out to ameliorate the problem or prevent the risk. So we use diverse methodologies. So like multimodal imaging. Today I'm going to cover some, and the physiological measures like the cortisol hormone, stress hormone, and heart rate variability. And the intervention today, I'm going to focus on contemplative practice, such as the mindfulness and the contemplative movements. Of course, we use other methodology, but I mainly focus on imaging and physiology today. So I'm a long-term practitioner. This story. So I got a severe accident when I was 6. So doctor gives up, but I was healed by a traditional medicine doctor and a master. So actually, because of the accident, I got an opportunity to learn. So very lucky. I got many teachers. So based on my learning and practice in 1990s, when I was a professor in medical school, I developed this method. So I call this effortless practice. So focusing on the body and the mind. So this is just called the body-mind training. However, when I moved to US as a professor, so people often call it the mindfulness. I think it's totally fine. But any contemplative practice, it always targeted the body, brain, and the mind. So for the past plus years, I applied this method as a research tool to explore the mechanism and its application in healthy patient population. So far we published over 50 papers, 3 books only about this on this topic. So in total, there are 10 books regarding loss of brain mechanism, but 3 regarding to this topic. So this field, if we want to use the short term describe, they call the mechanisms and effects of contemplative practice, such as meditation or mindfulness, Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, and other methods. So this field aims to review the mind-body brain changes and their interactions after practice. So certainly we can use neuroimaging, certainly we can use physiology measures, behavior tests, even on the epigenetic measures. Of course, the first person experience sampling also important. So based on literature, I will first take a mindfulness meditation as an example. Then I'll discuss the mechanism of the movement-based practice like yoga, Tai Chi, and Qigong. So however, there are many thousands of papers, but I only want to use the designs based on a randomized control trial with active control to deliver the message. I will explain you in a minute why I favor other ICT design. So this is a randomized control trial. So in general, we want to study one treatment or one practice works or not. So we need to randomly assign participant to 2 conditions, whatever treatment or practice A and B. So then we give them time to practice, then they go to post measures. So compared to pre-measures, you can see some difference, like a red color person, there's some difference. So this RCT is a trial. All the participants must randomly assign. You cannot say, okay, group A, you go A, group B, you go B. No, random assign. Then the 2 groups, one we call experimental, another called control. But the control should be very active. It's a comparable control. So that it works. So if we don't use RCT, we use one condition, like I have a long-term meditation practitioner. So they practice 10 years. So I compare with another novice meditator without any experience. So certainly long-term practitioner already practiced. So the experience shape their brain, the body, they can overperform on the released novice. So this is not an active control, not RCT. So people can argue, okay, so I got another B practiced, compare with released novice. So we can see B also works, A works, B works, C works. It doesn't make any sense. But we should understand when we study the long-term practitioner, it's not easy to find. Also, when you want to have an active control group, you need a double effort. Actually, you run 2 practice. So it's a double effort, double time, double money, resource. That's why people tend to use one condition versus with least. So here's my talk. So first, focus on mindfulness using RCT. Second, I will target the attention self-control part. Also involve the self-awareness. So this feeds the first aid TS framework, including the self-awareness, self-regulation, and self-inquiry. But today I only cover self-regulation or control and awareness. So we talk about the ANS, autonomic nervous system, our body, and the CNS, our brain. They have a bidirectional interaction, follow the practice. Then I move to the potential mechanism of a contemplative practice. Then explore how neuroscience may help cultivate the practice effectively. I try to link or combine the neuroscience finding with practice, so then we can learn. So if this practice strategy is really based on the neuroscience principle and how we can do better. So of course, there are lots of remaining questions I will point out and discuss with you. So this figure indicating how many methodology we could use. So like imaging, MRI, EEG can study, then go to the neurophysiology, then even go to the genetics from the saliva and blood sample or even the cheek swab sample. It's all non-invasive. Then we can target the behavior, bottom left, go to the top right, go to the disease therapy treatment. Then we go to the top left, from birth to death, across lifespan. Of course, we can target the whole brain. We can target the attention network or visual system. But you go to the single neuron, small group neuron, usually go to the animal work. So we mainly focus on the human work. So if we targeted the contemplative practice, so we have two versions. One version like a stillness practice, another version like a movements. So we first go to the mindfulness. You look at the literature, there are significant increase in the publication of work. So since 2019, each year there are over 1,200 papers. However, you look at it before 2009, 10 years ago, so there's less than 100 papers. So this field significantly increased. Relatively small amount of study related to the movement-based, like yoga, Tai Chi, or Qigong. There are about 40% to 50% of the mindfulness publication each year. So to summarize the achievement in the mindfulness, there are lots of positive findings, including the behavior, physiology, neuroimaging, brain plasticity. Basically, large body of mindfulness study use long-term meditative and cross-sectional design to show the effect. I just mentioned to you, cross-section design is compared to the RCT design. Only one group practiced, another group we list. So if we go to long-term practitioner, one challenge is that if we try to define long-term practice as a 10,000 hour practice, so it would take about 30 years, so we can get this population, because if you practice 1 hour per day. So it's difficult, but it's not easy to find a long-term practitioner. So cross-sectional study recently in the literature has been criticized, but the field actually moved towards rigorous RCT. So I show you lots of study, mainly from the review articles and the meta-analysis articles. So you can see many. So the field moved to the rigorous design. So the hypothesis. So certainly mindfulness involved attention. Then mindfulness involved the self-control or self-regulation. So we speculate or hypothesize mindfulness is a systematic training of attention, self-control, or self-regulation. Certainly, the mechanism related to these two components. So this is the attention self-control network. So look at the triangle. So the triangle is the midline frontal area, one called the prefrontal medial part, and anterior cingulate ACC. So it's very important because executive attention share with brain circuits of self-control, mainly in this network. So if a method or training or practice can really change this network, then certainly support mindfulness mechanism. So I show you some study, just give example. So mindfulness induces brain plasticity. So I call it self-directed plasticity because we modulate, we reorganize our own brain through the effortful and effortless self-control process using different training approach. So question one, whether brief mindfulness, like a 5-20 minute session. So if I use the body mind training as an example, So we want to see if they change. So we need another active control. So I use relaxation therapy called RT. So we target the brain function called the brain resting state or deformal network. You all know. So in literature, at least 10 hours per day or even more, without doing any task, our mind is always wandering and actively participating in self-referential processing or self-related processing. This is a DMN network that supports the process. However, this attention habit and brain baseline is related to negative emotions and many disorders. So this is the real resting state, but I call the restless mind because the mind is wandering. You look at the midline, so the brain is so busy. So if we do a short mindfulness, can we calm down the brain so that to save the energy resource for better performance? Yes. So after 5 session, 20-minute session, so in addition to reduce stress hormone cortisol and improve the emotion, cognition, we also find the brain significantly calm down. Only there are several spots light up. One related to self-regulation center, another related to self-awareness center, another related to the reward center. So you look back, it's very busy, but right now you calm down. So in other words, even though the very brief mindfulness, we can regulate or change the brain baseline for human beings to save more mental resource for better performance. So the second question, if participant practice over 5 sessions, like 10 sessions or longer, can we change brain structure? If so, our brain changes associated with some behavior changes. So we use another MR technology called the diffusion tensor imaging, same RCT design, 2 group. So the DTI measures the diffusion of water molecule in tissue. So we can map the brain white matter changes of fiber. Of course, the DTI use like FA, ADRD as the index. So don't need to worry. You just remember they measure the diffusion of a water molecule in tissue. So if the fiber, the brain tissue has more water molecule towards the certain direction after practice, it means the brain reorganized to support efficient information processing because the fiber usually connect the 2 hemispheres. So this is the 10 session. I show this bigger one. So you can see the blue and the green is the ventral part of the ACC, anterior cortex, self-regulation center. And then the purple and the red is dorsal part. And the important thing is called the corpus callosum. This structure connected 2 hemispheres. So all the brain structure change is related to the self-control attention network. You can see this one, it may be easier. The same story, self-control center, self-awareness center back, and the reward center in the bottom. So the 3 center, around the 3 center, the brain fibers, white matter, reorganize and even grow to connect each other. So the practitioner have more positive emotion, pleasant feeling. Then this motivation support, feeling support the better attention self-control. Then awareness level increase, so they have a global monitoring, global awareness. So we measure the behavior and the structure. We found emotion regulation significant correlate with brain structure. In other words, brain structure change can really support emotion first. So broadly, white matter actually is very sensitive to learning experience. So learning experience or other experience can really shape the brain, in particular the white matter, the fiber. So in addition to emotion, also cognition, motor control, you can see the whole brain. So really support human behavior. Then some people ask a further question. So you even can show us like the 5 hours, 10 session, very short. We sit there, change brain structure. Then how does it happen? What contribute to white matter change? So I give you a story. So when my postdoc first analyzed this data, found a significant result, they did not believe them. They said, oh, no way. They sit there, just change brain structure. It cannot happen. So we got a little bit hard time. Our team doubt our own finding. So I send our data to National Institute of Health. They have a neuroimaging center. Ask their faculty scientists to analyze our data, but without giving them any information. So after a week, they complete our analysis, say, oh, look, this must be the patient study. So before, after, you see the patient change, right? I told them, no, it's the healthy population after 5 hours mindfulness. Then they said, no way, it's impossible. People cannot sit there to change the brain structure. So we have a strong mindset and belief. It's not easy to convince ourselves. So this paper or this direction paper took a time to be accepted by the editors, reviewers. And even though accepted by the review for publication, after maybe 3 years, only a few people cite it. Only after 5 years, 10 years, many people start to cite it because they also show the similar result using short practice. So it's really not easy, even though for science. You show the data, but the people have a mindset. Anyway, so I try to answer the question, what contribute? So we go a little bit the molecular level, go to see the neuron. So the neuron, so you look at the AD, RD, and the myelin and axon. So the AD called the axial diffusivity related to the axon, connect. And the myelin related to radial diffusivity called RD. So MR can measure these two parts. So if we can show AD and all RD change after white matter, we can conclude this axon change or myelin change really contributed to the white matter, the fiber change. Of course, we find, so the mindfulness practice induce myelination and axon change in the regions related to self-control and reward network. This contributes to the white matter change. In contrast, you look at the literature, months of years of computerized training program, they use computer doing a task training. So only induce axon change in task-related area, not in self-control, attention, reward network. So this may suggest, so these two type of training involve different mechanisms. Of course, many studies have also shown functional structure change in brain deformal network in the midline, attention network, self-control regulation network, self-awareness related network, or reward network, and other brain areas. But literature also show different mindfulness techniques and the practice lengths also contribute to the plasticity. So different techniques may involve some kind of different part of brain activity or plasticity. And short-term, long-term practitioner may also produce some difference. But overlapping areas are involved in the attention, self-control, self-awareness, some reward, and many DMN. So I want to make another point here, just because, so when we measure people who practiced, so we actually did not consider, so if this participant and practitioner are in the same level, I call the stage of practice. For example, so we gathered 20 participants, so they practice from like 1 year to 3 years. And every day they have different lengths, or every week have different time practice. So some may be in the early stage, so they try very hard, try to learn. Then some may be in the middle, so they sometimes can handle the practice well, but sometimes not very well. And other group, even though they go to 3 years, they are very skillful. So they use less effort and even effortless to do the practice. But in the literature, there are many studies combining this group people. They have a different background, using different techniques, and practice time vary and stage vary. So these factors can also contribute to the result. So yeah, another thing, like the effort for an effortless strategy of practice can also change plasticity. I will talk about this topic later. So related question, does brief mindfulness change brain metabolism like neurochemistry? So we use called the MRS technique. It's a non-invasive and novel MR technique, can detect brain chemistry and the metabolites. It measures lots of important neurochemicals like glutamate, GABA, and MLNA related to cognition, emotion, behavior, stress, and others. Of course, if we don't use the MR, we can use the PET, but a PET uses a radioactive drug called a tracer to detect the biochemical change. But MRS does not involve any radioactive drugs. So it's called non-invasive. So then we find about a 10-hour, 10 to 20 session. So the people can really increase two chemistry, like chemicals like glutamate, NA, related to emotion regulation, cognitive functioning, and reduce the ML is related to aging, cognitive decline, and the problem. So it seems that chemistry also changed along with functional structure change. Then we need to consider another equipment called the EEG. So EEG, people call the neurophysiological change. So it can measure the electrical activity in the brain. Compared to MR, EEG has better temporal resolution. I mean, millisecond better, but the lower spatial resolution means the targeting or localized brain areas with lower accuracy. So combining these two may be better. So from the review articles and meta-analysis studies, so it seems that the diverse mindfulness meditation techniques mainly involve alpha and theta wave in the brain area related to the attention, self-control, and deformal network. But several studies also suggest the gamma wave. So we still don't know, but I think they need lots of further research. So this is a summary about what we find so far based on the mindfulness related to the core brain regions. So you can see, so from the midline, prefrontal cortex, and posterior cingulate, and go to the anterior cingulate, and go to the striatum. So they all related to self-control, regulation, self-awareness, reward, right? And deformal network. Then amygdala related to the task related to performance, following the mindfulness, emotion, and insula on the right related to the interoceptive awareness, bodily response. So in summary, so related to attention control, there are two regions mainly: emotion regulation, multiple regions, and self-awareness, several regions, and also self-referential processing, DMN. However, I want to emphasize the body, mind, and brain always work together. We need to consider the physiological change. So this is our brain and autonomic nervous system. So the sympathetic, parasympathetic. Parasympathetic activity means that you are more relaxing, more calm. And the sympathetic activity means that you are active, arousal. So then this framework shows a bi-directional interaction between the two systems. So we try to answer the first question. So do body and mind work together to support? So we use the similar design, but we measure differently, brainwave and physiology. So this is the physiology. SCR, lower, means more relaxing, more calm. So the blue dots related to the IBMT and the red is RT. So you can see X means the time. So in the middle, about 15 minutes. So all group go deeper mindfulness state. In other words, so you practice about 15 minutes, it's a good dose for you to get in deeper. If you go to 3 minutes, you're still in the surface. You are towards into the deeper. Then heart rate variability, the similar story, but higher means more parasympathetic, more calm. So certainly IBM is higher. And you can measure the heart rate and calculate. So then we measure the brainwave theta in the midline ACC area, and it's X, Y is heart rate variability. We find a significant correlate, suggesting body and mind work together to maintain the state. So in summary, a similar mindfulness works through the two systems. And contemplative movements involve mindfulness and diverse body practice. So more bodily and mental process. It may involve more areas or complicated process. We don't know yet. So from the literature, because there are not many literature compared to mindfulness, so in the movement study. However, we use the Tai Chi, Yoga, Qigong as a representative approach. So we find from literature, so these movements change brain structure and function related to self-control, executive functioning, and the deformal network, including the prefrontal cortex, cingulate cortex, hippocampus, temporal lobe, and others. It seems that mainly overlapped with mindfulness. But from the study, so literature, so the lack of a robust empirical research and rigorous RCT is a limitation because this design precludes causality. So more longitudinal RCT design really needed to further show the contemplative movement, the mechanism, and how to translate into practice. So I want to make some point. Some people use like a bodifulness, different, similar to describe this practice. So what are they? So in general, we call it's a deep state of somatic wakefulness, the body coordination, coherence, and harmony through the gentle adjustment exercise. Our body posture with a full awareness to achieve a present balance integration in our bodies, mainly involving implicit process like ANS regulation. But a study shows the full awareness and present body, bodifulness, facilitating the mindfulness. Consistent with the literature that body posture and the state affect the mental process such as emotion, retrieval of memory, and stress hormone in the cortisol. So this field called embodied cognition, embodiment research. So this just support how the body posture state influence our mental process. So when we use the bodifulness to describe this stage, so initially, so the posture focus is our goal. So it mimics standardized learned posture. If we examine the effects, we got the learning process, technology part. For the advanced stage, so practitioners focus on the state of spirit similarities. It's beyond the posture and based on the innate body wisdom for practice, so-called a whole system flow, coherence, coordination, harmony. I remember one speaker, Tiger Bell, delivered beautifully how you can practice to become coherence, harmony, coordination way. So some people even propose, so we should follow the natural movement guided by the internal energy, although we don't know how to measure it yet. So because original practice like Tai Chi, so does not have a design posture. Instead, it's a natural flow of movement lead to diverse Tai Chi posture. So the question, how to measure it? So we can borrow some idea from other field. So one called the habitual posture, it's a regular posture we have, but we are not aware of. Then we build the posture tone. So the steady but adaptable background muscle activity. So this activity, this posture tone, is generated subconsciously or unconsciously. So just become a habit. So we need a mindfulness aware, need a bodifulness to pay attention to it. So this process not only use muscle, but also use other tissues. Some propose like a fascia. So a continuous system of connective tissue throughout the body that communicates with nervous system, the brain, spinal cord. So fascia holds all parts of the body together and is highly adapted to change. So this adjustment and experience also shape our brain plasticity. But the question, we really need a real-time sensing measure. So recent technique development called total body PET imaging. So it helps or not because it can scan the brain, scan the body at the same time. So I use this one as a summary. So it's a bodifulness plus mindfulness can facilitate the effective practice. You look at this one. So left part mindfulness, right part bodifulness. So they involve the cognitive control, autonomic control. Then together improve the effective self-control and awareness. So better for the psychological health well-being. So we have been trying many ways to cultivate practice. I want to link neuroscience with the practice. So we try different techniques, teachers, more retreat, longer time, even though we use equipment, substance to support our awareness, a feeling. So I want to give one example about the effortless practice. We know little, so we just published a paper this year trying to figure out a mechanism of this training. So usually effort training, we know you need to maintain the effort control during the whole training, achieve the goal. So usually supported by the frontal parietal lobe. Attention training, working memory training, some meditation required more effort maintain state. Reversely, effortless training engage minimal mental effort and autonomic control, we just talk about. So usually people enjoy this kind of effortless practice. So this is three core regions related to the effortless training. So the first one is still the ACC, involving the effort monitoring so they can assign the effort properly, and attention control in a balanced way, then self-regulation. Then the back of the PCC is monitoring and regulating global brain dynamics, effort, and information processing, keep awareness. Then striatum, the blue, habit formation, reinforcement, and automaticity of effortlessness form a habit. So this is a summary. You can look at more detail. On the left part, you see the brain regions involved, parasympathetic involved, and they use the rigid, fixed, and stressful attention mode. Then continuous effort on the object. On the right, so they use parasympathetic activity. It's open, soft, flexible attention mode. So ask people to rest as innate awareness effortlessly. So then we go to some strategy based on the neuroscience finding. So the mind wandering is always there, right? So when we become aware, it stops. So mindfulness practice does not aim to change our mind to be good or be a certain state. It's a mindset change. Instead, we just become aware of a mental process and let them be. Doesn't matter if they arise or disappear. So we don't intervene. This is the nature of a mind. If we control the mind, we are stuck and entangled with the uncontrollable mind and thought. So meanwhile, brain is plastic and continuous change according to this kind of experience we have and create. So this strategy produced new conditioning and plasticity. It depends on which strategy we are going to use or we have been used. Of course, parasympathetic systems support this effort. So question one, is it possible to begin with effort practice rather than I practice many years and realize, oh, it's effortful practice. So from the Soto Zen, it's the example. So they just allowing all the experience arise, pass away naturally without interference. And IBMT also is stress non-effort to control manipulating thought or feeling. Instead, emphasized awareness of the natural state of body and mind, accept whatever arises in one's awareness at each moment. Another TM, using repeated meaningful sound during practice. So then this sound or mantra becomes secondary in the experience and ultimately disappears, where self-awareness becomes primary. There are many other efforts practice too we can try. So I want to mention the attention balance state. So it's not control, but you keep balance. And this attention balance state contrasts with our typical attention state, which we are cleaning, suppressing our mental state and behavior using control. So it changes our tendency to avoid or resist dislikes and cleaning attached to likes. So therefore, this attention habit initiates new conditioning and guide our attention through an open, soft, flexible mode. Then gradually become a new habit. So this is the idea. On the green bar is the important part. You find a balance between the effortful and effortless practice. So I call that attention balance state. So another message I'll deliver, so you actually on the way trying not to try. So you are doing something, but you're doing in a being way. In the Asian Chinese culture, called Wu Wei from Taoism. Wu Wei means is being, or doing in a being way. So let me summarize. So training effortless attention control is also possible and supported by the ACCPC Stratum Network and the parasympathetic system. Trying not try is the spirit. And a different effortless training approach may share an overlapping neural mechanism that support effortlessness, but each may also involve neural mechanisms that are unique to the particular training approach. So there are lots of things we don't know or know little, like a lasting effect for short-term training. And what's the difference between two versions of training, long-term, short-term? How to induce efficient neuroplasticity, how to cultivate effortless training, individual difference, and how to combine total training. There are more. But I want to talk a few topics before we end the session. So one called a higher state of consciousness. So far, most studies focus on the subjects with minutes to hours daily practice without a transcendental and transformative experience. Rarely study focus on subject with a higher state of consciousness. So we call it an elevated awareness and perception, a deeper connection with and understanding of the nature of reality, the self and others, and the very spiritual aspect of life. So this group participant, you always have a consistent experience like samadhi, jhanas, non-duality, selflessness, spiritual awakening, enlightenment, whatever we use the term. So it's very difficult to find a qualified subject for research. So some case study report more alpha, theta, delta, or gamma in similar brain regions like self-control, attention, reward during this kind of experience. But the findings are inconsistent and inclusive. So we need lots of work for this topic. Another part regarding to state and treat. So is it possible to have a stable treat after the practice? My answer is yes or no. So I think speaker Lawrence talked about the situated assessment method. It's a beautiful framework. It relates to treat, situation, interaction. So it's a dynamic relationship with a tendency but a variation. Yeah, in other words, so for regular people who practiced, it seemed that the treat is always interact with situation. It depends on the situation. It's a relatively stable, but it might be possible for special participants who have attained, for example, like a 4 to 4 stage of enlightenment. So just from the text, from the biography, I find some people report their own experience, so it's possible. So for the taking home message today, so many people say, okay, if the study published, peer review articles, then we accept, we believe. If not published, we don't believe that. However, in the human scientific breakthrough, many new findings cannot be accepted by everyone, cannot pass the review. So I want to make a point that today, I try my best to share my understanding about the contemplative neuroscience, but cannot cover all the work. At the beginning of summit, Tia proposed a beautiful framework like self-awareness, self-regulation, and self-inquiry for contemplative practice. Today, I only explore the first 2 topics. But the point is that scientific study review the relative truth because of theoretical limitation, because our human mind has a limitation and our technology has a limitation. So in the future, maybe more advanced technology can detect the subtle change we have not found yet today. But then when human improved mind, wisdom, we have a new theoretical framework design, we can find more. So we always need to be open-minded and mindful, compassionate to new perspective and new experience. I'm going to stop here and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Tong, and for your beautiful summary and your authentic commitment to sharing truth and supporting humanity's ability to benefit from contemplative practice. The first question has to do with the focus on the brain and the focus in many traditions on what is called the heart-mind in more of this area of the sternum, and whether any the neuroscience has ever attempted to focus on the region of the heart-mind to see what is happening there.
It's a great question. There are several attempts, but not directly answer this question. The short answer. People try many ways to go and use a different term to describe the heart-mind. But in reality, we cannot find a very directed index to represent the heart mind.
Mhm. And continuing in that vein, there's a tale that's told that I'm not sure is true, that when one of the Tibetan monks was participating in having all of the measurement devices put on his head, he said, what about putting them in the area of my abdomen and more in the enteric nervous system? Has there been any effort to look at that aspect?
It's another great point. So the body-mind interaction always is a central topic of the contemplative neuroscience. So usually we measure the brain, we get a brain signal. Then we measure the body, like abdomen, we measure the body signal. So this is our limitation. It's the technology limitation. We got a problem. And I just mentioned when the whole body PET imaging, so they can scan the body, brain at the same time, not the exact same time, to go this way faster, still some delay. That may show something. Yeah, but there are lots of technical issues. You scan the brain, how to analyze. Then you scan the body, how to analyze. There are so many internal organs, right? And at the same time, people are alive, they're breathing, they change. So we need a real-time dynamic measures. We need a scientific revolution to find a new equipment.
Thank you. And then tying into some of the ancient measures of pulse, tongue, tone of voice, has there ever been any parallel assessment of the contemplative movement practices causing changes in the pulse or in the tongue, and then mapping that against other more modern measures?
Yeah, it's another wonderful question. There are some attempts, but they're very limited. I think just because researchers cannot get a funding. This is why this tribe by their own limited resource. I think the Harvard Medical School a couple of years ago worked with a Chinese colleague, Traditional Chinese Medicine Institute. So they found something in the whole body system. There's another system. It seems that this system is invisible when people died. But when people are alive, they can measure from the traditional way. But the modern technology cannot detect inaccuracy. So, but the Harvard colleague and the Chinese colleague, they find something through the arms and the body, arms and hands. So they have not figured out if this information flow go to the brain or go to the pulse, tongue, connect together. So I would expect maybe the next time they have more resource, they can go further.
Thank you. And if one were to look up that study, what would you suggest we search for?
Let's see. How about I will search for you. I'll send you.
Thank you very much. Very kind. The next question is, could Dr. Tong speak to the deeper intersections of the nervous system and hormonal systems, and how the hormonal system, in addition to cortisol, are influenced by contemplative practices?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. So, our body posture change, like we sit down, then we stand up, we lie down. Immediately, our hormone system change, the level change, because the body posture represent our evolution memory. So from evolution, when we lie down, the body memory means, oh, you come down. So the hormone change. So in addition to cortisol, there are lots of other hormones in the system. So when contemplative practice starts, I found if one is still in the posture level, like a mimic posture, it's effort for control. So in their part, our hormone system, immune system still support the practice, but not in the optimal way. However, when one goes beyond this stage, I call the advanced stage. So they feel the coordination, harmony of the body, even though sometimes they move the body, but the body has no boundary. That time we found our brain and the hormone system can bridge a new connection, but not a stable, unstable connection. But if you reinforce, then this state can stabilize the new network in the brain and start a new connection from brain and body hormone system. So in a very novel way, just because we don't have a good measure to go to the same time, but we find some trend, very exciting.
Thank you. The next question, my interpretation of MRI changes in default mode network during meditation is that the DMN maintains the boundaries of the self, and the changes indicate lowering these boundaries and predispose to a sense of oneness. Would you agree with this interpretation?
I agree. I think that you have a very clear idea. Even though you use oneness, people may argue. But I think I understand your idea. I think this is a self-regulation when we in the practice. So the self-regulation process calm down and our holistic, or you call it oneness, whatever, so they can come up. Yes.
Thank you. Next question is, you spoke about effortless practice. Could you elaborate on what you're including when you use the term effortful versus effortless?
Tia, I want to clarify. So the question I want to ask what are the effortful and effortless practice included, right?
Yes, how to distinguish between what you're referring to as effortless versus effortful practice.
Yes. So effortful means when we practice, you can feel you need to exert, maintain effort to keep a state. You try, you keep it. But effortless means that you are there. Like every day, you have a daydream. Every day, you walk. So you don't need effort, like a habit. So this is the major difference. Another significant difference. So when you are in the effortless, you can feel something within, you feel the pleasure, joy, just naturally happen. Because our human mind wired by many, many habits, its brain works by habit because save energy, less effort, effortless. So if you do many, many things use effort, you cannot sustain. This is from scientific research. You put effort in one task, continue another task, your performance goes down. That second task, almost exhausted.
Thank you. You generously shared your personal story of learning contemplative practices as a part of your own healing. And then you shared your professional career of illuminating the contemplative neuroscience. The next question asks about what it's like to walk that edge where there must at times be moments of conflict between the Western developed scientific methods and the traditional contemplative practices. Are there aspects of contemplative practices that maybe simply cannot be understood with the Western scientific methods?
It's a lovely question. Yeah, if you think it's conflict, it is conflict from your mind. If you don't think so, it's not. For me, I think if we believe our experience, right? We believe ourselves, we know how to judge, how to make decisions. This is number one. Number two, we believe others. So that's why I said scientific research review the relative truth because of lots of limitation. So for me, when I'm in the scientific world, I realize I know a little, I have a limitation. So I need to open my mind. So when I practice, I found I still need to open my mind. So open my mind, mindful, is always the main theme across the professional and the personal practice, no conflict.
Thank you. The next one is there a connection between the skeletal alignment or posture and experiencing mindfulness? If yes, what would you suggest regarding posture?
It's a very important question for the posture. So when I was young, my teacher taught me to stand up this way about an hour. It's an unbelievable task for me. So I struggled to try very hard, cannot maintain an hour, 60 minutes. Then later on, the teacher taught me, so how you can adjust the posture, align, then you find a center, you find some kind of flow. So I found the spinal cord is very important part, spinal cord. For spinal cord from the Tai Chi, Qigong, and yoga, so they try to define the head, neck, shoulder, and go to the waist part, base bone, then go to the 2 feet. So that one line up to 4 centers in general. But look at the Western world, there are lots of body-based techniques, like Alexander techniques. They focus on also the body, right? And the chiropractic practice or therapy, they adjust your whole spinal cord. So in my view, I think there are 3 parts very important for the body. Number 1, your forehead and your forehead part. So their part is expansion, and their part, a little bit like smiling, is the first signal to send to the message to the brain. Second part, our chin little bit back, then allow the neck little bit up, and the shoulder go that way. So that way, the second part is so important. Then the third part, our waist abdomen part, the back. So their part, if you can line up with the first center, second center, their part line together, they will send a beautiful message to the brain through the spinal cord. So then the last part I want to emphasize, when we stand up or sit down, the 2 feet touch the ground. We seldom feel it, but in the middle between 2 feet, there's another center. If you can line up together with the 4, then you actually send a holistic message to the brain to start the rewire. The experience rewire the brain, shift the brain every moment.
Thank you. Are there any MRI studies or EEG studies that simply focus on what you just described, where if those 4 centers are out of alignment, there's a brain pattern distinct from when they are in alignment?
It's a great question. I don't believe there are a study regarding to the 4 centers or maybe 3 centers. There are some studies, very pilot. So they try to use the MR to figure out if some teacher levels participant, when they change the posture, certain posture, they can show some brain change. Mm-hmm. Yeah. My friend sent me one study, but the study, the design is not very good, but I realized it's not easy to find a participant, to find a resource. So I realized, so they have a little bit of finding, only 1 participant does not represent the result, but I think it's a very good direction. So if we can adjust the posture, then show brain change. But the challenge is that people differ. So how long you change brain posture can really change brain? This is a great question. We don't have a hypothesis yet. We don't know where to look at. This is challenging.
Thank you. The next question is, what intersections, if any, in research are occurring among the Eastern as well as Western traditions? And the question is getting at whether the studies have been looking at Sufism or Christian or Jewish traditions, as well as the Hindu and Buddhist traditions.
Yes, there are a few studies using the Western tradition as a topic, like a prayer, certain state. And I want to make a point. So across the Western, Eastern tradition, the culture, there are different forms of a practice, right? But the important thing, not the name, it's the mental process underneath. So people can call the mindfulness, but they do differently, right? So I would think Sufis, Hindu, and others. So we need to look at their detailed instruction, how the mental process they want a participant to achieve. And every session, how many mental processes involved and consistently involved, then we can figure out if this mental process contribute to certain brain plasticity, rather than the name, the title. I hope it helps.
Yes, to see the unifying pattern. Thank you. Speaking to your work and your IBMT, is it a system similar to John Kabat-Zinn's MBSR in which individuals can receive training and certification to share what IBMT offers?
Yeah, this is another good question in a practical way. So for me, I actually don't have time to do the practice, to do the service. So I'm really sorry. Yeah, just heavy involved in research. But I have a collaborator who volunteered to help me to deliver the IBMT training. So you look at I check my name, the website called imcenter.net. You check my name, you find their part. So you send an email to them, so they will ask you what you want to learn the IBMT. We don't have a many like very good packed system like John, because John sent me all his DVD, CD book. It's a lot. Yeah, he spent a whole life to develop. So I just share with part of my technique, really efficient to change brain, change physiology, behavior. So my collaborator just, if you work with them, so they send you the CD, DVD instructions, so you can learn online. And sometimes my collaborator invite me to answer the question because they cannot answer. So I volunteer to answer all the questions, like today, no problem.
Thank you very much. We look forward to pursuing that resource. Thank you. The next question is about research being done also in Arizona. And this person writes that there's someone doing research titled Science Enhanced Mindful Awareness Lab. And they believe that the research is using ultrasound as a means to encourage practice that leans towards effortless practice in all stages. And if you're aware of that work, could you comment on it?
I don't know this kind of work. I think this is not from my university, Arizona State, probably from other university. This related to the work I mentioned. So people try to use the equipment to support the practice. This is another direction. Like people use the app, people use brain stimulation, people use neurofeedback, people use other training. So I would think whatever method can really help a human being, help a human evolution, help us to be more mindful, to have more wisdom, I think it's good to try. And I will prefer the more scientific-based approach. So really based on study, can show it's safe, it's efficient, and it's helpful, so that people can try.
Thank you. Many people in the summit have spoken to the topics of anxiety and depression. We also have a new focus brought up in the question today about ADHD, and wondered if your work on the brain patterns through the various contemplative practices has also led you to look into what the brain patterns of ADHD are and how the contemplative practices can work to support an individual who's working with ADHD?
It's an excellent question regarding ADHD. You know, when I was young, I was diagnosed as ADHD because I cannot stay in the classroom quietly to listen because I had no interest in the topic. So many ADHD children, so actually they just cannot tolerate some boring topic. But this group can focus on the game, something continuous for hours, right? They have a full attention. So I think there are two ways. Number one, if a child, if an adult really engage certain thing, they will have attention. Second, so if a person has a problem in attention, so usually you will find there are some pathology change or psychological change in the person's system. Like in Europe, ADHD is very low compared to American diagnosis. Because in Europe, if a child has ADHD, so the first, the child will go to the psychotherapy to see if the family issues, peer issues, social issues influence the child to concentrate. In US system, when we find that a child cannot concentrate in the school, we tend to give a medication to calm down, become the same. So when I was young, if I was in US, I would get a medication, I believe so, to calm me down. But I think ADHD can really be treated or helped with contemplative practice. I show you example. So like if one has ADHD, cannot concentrate, get a hard time, if we can screen out without any non-interest, non-motivation, just cannot focus, right? So then we can use the simple way. I called, they got a problem for the attention. You don't ask them to put more effort. Instead, involve the effortless practice. So I will use a very simple posture to engage the child. So they follow the structure, follow the posture simply. Then you find, oh, they have a natural attention because they are learning, right? Then when they get in the state, then you give a little bit push, just support, so their mind quiet down. So only a few sessions, you find, oh, attention seems to improve a lot, just naturally. I call it ecological way to improve the attention. So just that you have limited resource occupied by others. So then we just give you a way you can boost yourself. Then you're back.
Thank you. And our final question is, given all the wisdom of lived experience from the practices and then the addition of modern validation through neuroscience, what is your vision or dream for the future in terms of how these practices could be interwoven into the educational and healthcare systems?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. Actually, if we separate practice from work, school, and life, we separate. So then it's go to different way. But from my view, actually, we are human beings. If we can breathe, we can practice, right? Every breath we are practicing, actually. So I think the mindfulness has become a skill, ability for modern population, in particular digital age. So these mindful skills, the core is awareness, right? Is awareness. So the awareness, if we have awareness, so we have a quality of practice, doesn't matter the form. So I will envision certainly the mindfulness will go into the school system, because in the school system, we never taught or seldom taught the students how to be mindful, how to do the emotion regulation, right? How to reduce stress. Part of the school system. Number two, the healthcare system. So healthcare system, usually we separate, like conventional system, medical system is the mainstream medical system. When I was trained in the medical school, so I learned all the like medication, surgery, many things pharmacological based. Then I realized there are another way, because when people rely on physician, they have a mindset. So I have a problem, I ask you to fix me. You fix me, my problem disappear. I got a health back. So the second part of healthcare system need to change is that, so we really need a patient to take own responsibility to start self-care. So we have a capacity to self-heal, to self-rehab, because our hormone system, immune system already put us as a human as a self-organizing homeostasis and allostatic system. We have this capacity, innate. So we just need a way, not only mindfulness, maybe exercise, maybe others, so we can reawaken the system, then we can better work. So self-care, I think, is another mainstream in the healthcare system in the future, from my view.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that vision of what is possible that helps everyone to be empowered with their practice of caring for their well-being. And thank you for the inspiring talk and the lifelong dedication to illuminating the merits of contemplative practice. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm very grateful, Tia. Thank you for inviting me to be the wonderful summit. Thank you for offering me this opportunity to learn from other speakers, to learn from audience. Yeah, it's so important for my own journey or for my scientific research. I really appreciate it. Thank you.